Hello. So we are here today interviewing Shiv Someshwar on his paper on managing peatland fire risk in central Indonesia. We're going to just go through the background of the paper and then kind of some of the drivers and solutions that they've found in the research study. So, Professor Someshwar, thank you for giving us your time today. Do you want to just start with a little bit of background on the study and the case study?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I've been working there. I'm at the Earth Institute, Columbia University, with colleagues both here and working closely with partners in EPB. That's the Indonesian term for Bogor Agriculture University. We've been conducting research in central Kalimantan and other parts of Indonesia as well on impacts of climate and development. As part of this long-term study, now we've been focusing on central Kalimantan and Sumatra on the impacts of peat forest fires on local livelihoods, health, economy, as well as a dominant interest is the release of carbon into the air as a greenhouse gas.
Great.
This has now been going on for several years, for almost 8 years, and it's been funded successively by the European Union, USAID, and other entities.
So what are some of the primary drivers that are causing the land use change, the deforestation? Why is this such an issue? Why is it happening now?
Okay.
Or in the last few years, I guess.
Indonesia is home to the third largest tropical forest in the world. And over 50% of that is peat soil, and other rest being mineral soil. And peat is basically almost 90 to 95% carbon. So when you have a forest fire in peat forest and in dry conditions, the fire can get into the peat layers, and then it can burn for months, releasing massive amounts of carbon. As you know, this year and a little bit last year as well, it was drier than normal. This year was pronouncedly drier because of El Nino conditions in the Central Pacific. And El Nino in the Pacific actually has a strong correlation with drought-like situations in parts of Central Kalimantan, West Kalimantan. And what that has done is what otherwise would not have been this kind of catastrophic impact of forest fire, because the drying has released massive amounts of carbon. By the middle of last year itself, the middle of 2015, late October, Indonesia, the daily emissions from peat forest fires was more than the combined daily emissions from the entire US economy.
Wow.
So it's just massive amounts of kind of peat forest fires. And the driver is, your questions suggested land use change. That's absolutely right. Land use change is coming from just the dynamics of development. You have, to some extent, it's not a major driver. To a small extent, it's urban growth. But primarily, it's for change for agriculture, palm oil plantations, and pulpwood, paper and pulpwood plantations. And the people who are driving this are not only, you'll hear a lot in the media, are the big multinational companies, a lot of the local Indonesian companies, very large companies, but also swidden cultivators, that's slash and burn farmers, and sedentary agriculturists. And also, given your interest in urban, a small part of the problem is the kind of land use regulations they have in Indonesia, where the only way to show that you are an owner of a land is to burn that land, and sometimes that gets out of control. And with escalating prices, especially in the urban fringe, there is a lot of interest in making sure that your interest in that land is in some sense kind of socially certified, and every year they kind of burn that.
Wow, so it's a serious problem, and
it's a huge
ingrained
problem.
Yeah,
Huge problem also, not only because of the global carbon emission, but huge kind of significant health impacts. The asthmatic kind of, what do you call it, number of cases really shoots up in the dry parts of the year because of peat forest fires.
Okay.
And it is such a massive, the plume of smoke and haze is so massive that satellites can actually capture this, spreading across good part of the Indian Ocean.
Wow. So I know a big part of the work that IRI and WRI have been doing is climate prediction models for the rainfall season, kind of seeing when it's going to be particularly dry, and then helping to guide policy decisions on this burning and the regulations. Can you let us know a little bit more about the policy and how that environment is progressing?
Yeah, I think the paper was published as part of a compendium of case studies by WRI, but WRI World Resource Institute was not involved with the study at all.
Okay.
It was done by the Earth Institute, IRI, and other entities within the Earth Institute, and now increasingly CSD, Center on Sustainable Development, and the partners, both in partners in the academia in Indonesia as well as government.
Okay.
Okay. So I lost your question.
Just the policy, how we're feeding into the regulation.
See, now, because of both kind of internal pressures, environmentalists, as well as external pressures internationally brought on, especially by Singapore and Indonesia, which are at the receiving end of this haze in the dry season, Indonesian government has been trying to do a lot. One of the key they have done is establish a moratorium on establishing giving new licenses in primary natural growth forests. This was done in 2011, renewed in 2013 through 15, and now again it's been renewed by the new president. But it has had, while it's really good, it has had limited impacts because of the weak state, the nature of the state of Indonesia. By the time you get down to the village across in far off central Kalimantan or Sumatra and Riau. Second, there are a lot of local interests, both kind of commercial interests as well as livelihood interests in clearing land. And to clear land, fire is the least expensive and the most effective way to clear forests. After they take away the kind of the main timber, then to clear biomass is the easiest way. Okay, so that's why they keep using fire. So what we have in our kind of prediction model, because now we can actually predict peat forest fires 3 months in advance. Wow. So what we can actually do is, unlike in other parts of the world, the human influence there is constant in Indonesia. They set fire in the beginning of the dry season, and then if it's not too dry, most of the fires are kind of remain on the surface. Of course, for biodiversity and for forestry, it's very bad because it will kind of destroy them. And orangutan, part of this area where we work also is a natural habitat for orangutans, and so that's bad news for the orangutans. But from a global carbon perspective, from local kind of massive livelihood impact, it's not as bad as when fire gets into the peat, then begins to burn for months on end, right? So what now we can predict is, because of this constant human impact, what varies is moisture of peat. And the moisture is controlled by rainfall. It does not get moisture. Peat doesn't get moisture from other parts, for example, from the ground up, from aquifers. So because we can predict the rainfall in this 3 months in advance, voila, we can actually, like magic. People find it, especially in Indonesia, they find it remarkable that we can actually predict forest fires 3 months in advance. Because currently what they have is weather-based prediction, and mostly it's from remote sensing, where forest fires have already occurred, and then it's useful in order to suppress forest fires, but you can't really do any anticipatory planning. So now what we're doing is working closely with the governments in Jakarta, the central government, provincial down to district level in a few of the provinces. We're working with them, looking at institutions. How do you kind of create the right kind of institutions, working with existing ones, organizations, and what should be the nature of incentives? By just telling people don't use forest fires, it hasn't worked. Not going to work because of powerful economic interests. So what should be the nature of incentives and the institutional structure? For example, if there is interest in either a carbon fund or if some company wants to offset its carbon by investing in Indonesia, then we really need to kind of incentivize to make sure that the resources actually reach the people who are actually not using forest fires.
Exactly.
Right? So that's now what we're kind of working on. So there's
Okay.
huge kind of policy implications for both local livelihoods impact as well as kind of global level.
All right. I mean, so are they using the climate predictions now, the model, the 3 months in advance? Is that being to set policies?
It's kind of yes and no.
Yeah.
It's been useful when they have come up with this new central regulation called POSNAS.
Yeah.
They have mentioned that we need to be careful of and be considerate of El Nino conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So they know that there is a longer term, 3 months in this case, impact. But the actual kind of decision making of this FRS system that we developed with DPB is still sluggish.
Yep.
They still fall back on the weather-based system because that's what they know, and also that the other kind of reactive responses that they are used to doing. So
Yeah.
this is also a part of part of the research is to understand how institutions innovate or don't innovate. Kind of most institutions don't kind of innovate. They have prescribed standard operating procedures, and that's the way they do things.
Yep.
So it's hard to kind of change behavior of institutions.
For sure. Yep. Well, thank you, Shiv. I think that was it for now, but I look forward to hearing more about how the project progresses as you continue your work with Bogor and other partners on the ground.
Yeah, I just returned from Indonesia.
Great.
Off again in May. Lovely. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.